Hello, everybody. This is Pastor Terry Roberts. We're talking about Developing the Leader Within You 2.0, which, of course, is a John Maxwell book. I really encourage you to get the book and the workbook if you want to, and just do some self-examination. It helps you kind of process and test where you are and all these different things. Maybe you find one or two of the things in the book that you really need to work on. It helps you kind of identify those. So I really encourage you to do that. Today's session is vision. Vision. I'm going to give you a couple of definitions of what vision is. It means seeing the future in the present, built on the past. Vision is seeing the invisible and making it visible. Vision is an informed bridge from the present to a better future. Vision is what you see. Mission is what you do. A vision is a clear mental picture of a better tomorrow. You could say it's hope. It's seeing the future in a hopeful manner, given by God, which moves the person to believe that it not only could be done, but it should be done. It's the portrait of a better future. Vision is what you see. It would be really interesting if you could just ask yourself, what do I see? What do I see in the future? What do I see for my life? What do I see for my family? What do I see in my business or my ministry? And so just ask yourself that, what is it that I see? Because you're aiming at something. And it would be good to identify what it is you're aiming towards. Maybe your vision has been, twisted because of all the things going on in the world, COVID and the election and all the different things where people were fighting with each other. Maybe your vision has been twisted. Maybe you're aiming someplace that you don't really intend to go. So you need to ask yourself, where am I going and why? And what is forming that picture? Of course, as a Christian, as a follower of Jesus Christ, I believe that God has a plan and a vision for people's life. And really the key there is discovering that vision. Rather than creating the vision, you're discovering the vision. What is your vision for your family? What is God's vision for your family? That's even better. So it's the portrait of a better future. What you see determines what you can be. I love how Maxwell breaks it down that there are 4 types of people. And boy, this is the truth. I've seen it. This one is so true. There are people concerning vision. There are wanderers who never see it. No matter what you do, they just don't see it. They're just kind of waking up that day and, heading into whatever life is holding out for them. They're wanderers. There are followers. They see the vision, but they never rise above following a vision. They never have a vision. They're just followers. And, thank God for them. But the next step is achievers. They see the future and they go for it. They see the future and they go for it. But here's one that a lot of people skip. The last one is leaders who are visionaries. They're the people who inspire vision in other people. A leader doesn't just have a vision. A leader inspires vision. He gives people a reason to go forward. He encourages what's on the inside of them and helps them to grab a hold of it and release it. They're visionaries. Someone who has a vision will do the vision, but someone who can inspire other people to have a vision is visionaries. That's the highest one. I really encourage you to go for that. Be a leader. Passion drives vision. What do you hate? What do you love? What do you have to see change in your lifetime? What can you look at in life and say that it has to be different? That's your vision. What's your passion? What's driving you? Vision just tells you what to do, how you're going to do it. But passion is the motivator for vision. It's very important that we see that. It isn't just aiming at a picture. It's asking yourself, why does that need to be? Why is really the motivator for vision, not just what. So what do you really care about? I love in the Chris Wark's book, it's called Chris Beat Cancer. It talks about how when he was going for treatment for his cancer, he had to get the right mindset or have the right vision. And the medical people said, very interesting question. Do you want to live? And you would say, well, of course I do. But secondly is, why do you want to live? In other words, why are you motivated to live? What is your passion? Why do you want to live? Is it your family? Is it something in the future? And then, do you believe it's possible? Do you want to live? Why do you want to live? And do you believe it's possible to beat this problem so that you can live? Boy, that is so good. Maxwell talks about a leader seeing more than others do before others do. Seeing more and before. Seeing more and seeing before. So I love that. And what he talks about, which is an interesting perspective, an interesting way of looking at vision, is the idea of abundance. The idea of abundance. If you have a negative mindset, You'll just think there's just enough. This whole world view that just says there's a shortage of everything versus there's creativity. If we run out of one thing, we'll make something else. It has to do with hope, how you see the future. Do you have a hope for the future? Or are you just going to find a way to survive somehow? A vision is looking at the future and being honest about the potential problems you're going to face, but saying, because I'm a Christian, because I have vision, I'm going to face that and beat it. So a scarcity and a negative worldview will keep you from seeing a bright future and having a vision. You need to have a more perspective. I like that. A visionary focuses on the positive future that is possible because it's not just hiding out. So many people are just saying, what do I need to do to make it? What do I need to do to survive? There's something bigger than that on the inside of you besides just surviving. Gerald Brooks said something very interesting. He said, the COVID world is dealing with fear, depression, and anger. Fear, depression, and anger. And the answer is 1 Corinthians 13:13. The abiding virtues or values for eternity are faith, hope, and love. Isn't it interesting? The world is facing fear, depression, and anger. And God says we should pursue faith, hope, and love. So having a vision or being a visionary is someone who has the right values and virtues motivating them. And a real vision isn't just about you. It's how God can use you to help other people. A real vision goes beyond your future to helping other people's future. That's when it really, takes off. Becky and I were in Atlanta once to a meeting for the Maxwell organization, and they took us to the Coke, world headquarters there in Atlanta. John was there, and they were taking pictures with everybody. And the reason he wanted to go to Coke was because of their vision, because of how they had impacted the world. In your book, in page 168, 169, it talks about Robert Woodruff, who lived in the early part of the 20th century. And he said they wanted every serviceman to get a Coke for a nickel or less. Every serviceman to get a Coke. And then he changed it and said, before I die, I want every person on planet Earth to have tasted Coca-Cola. Now, whether you like Coca-Cola or not, it worked. As far as I know, it worked. Anywhere you go in the world, they've got Coca-Cola. What if the church, what if your business, what if whatever enterprise you're involved in could get that same perspective and say, I believe this is possible. Think about that. He wanted every person on planet Earth to have tasted a Coke. Is what you're pushing, is what you're propagating more important than Coke? Well, we need to get a bigger vision than Robert Woodruff maybe. It's another story that's in your book, and I love it. I've heard it before. Walt Disney wanted to do Walt Disney World in Florida. And specifically, I think he was doing the Epcot Center, which is my favorite part of the Walt Disney World. And so he had a vision for it, and he laid it out. And then he died. And so when they were dedicating it, one person stood up and said, wouldn't it have been great if Walt could have seen this? And Mrs. Disney, Walt's wife, stood up and said, he did, and sat back down. And the whole point is, Walt saw it on the inside before it came to pass on the outside. His vision is what caused it to come to pass. And so you have to have a vision before you do it. You have to have a direction. Without a vision, people perish. It's kind of like getting in your car and having nowhere to go. You've got to have a target. You've got to have a destination. Your vision is your destination. Now, as sure as you set a vision, there are going to be some obstacles, first of all, in your own brain fighting you. And then often some people around you will fight you. And then you're bound to face an obstacle or two. So there's going to be some kickback and some pushback. But if you clearly see where you're headed, you can push through the pushback. Maxwell teaches a principle called advanced attraction. Advanced attraction. I love it. Here's what he says. When you know what you want, you will attract what you need. When you know what you want, you will attract what you need. Now, again, as a follower of Jesus Christ, I believe there's a God factor there. But even apart from biblical truth, just in the world, when you know clearly what you want, you have a tendency to gather the resources and the people around you to help you do it. It works that way. It's remarkable. Provision is the money for the vision. Oftentimes people say, when I get enough money, when I get enough resources, I'll begin. When you lay the vision out, that's what actually attracts the resources to do the vision. It's called advanced attraction. So how do you do it? How do you get a vision? You have to believe there's more and before out there. You have to have faith, in other words. You have to believe in an abundant perspective, and you have to believe that you have the ability to see things even when the people around you maybe doubt it. Maybe you see something they don't see. Maybe you make a mistake. That's okay. You get up and you go on. You make a mistake, you get up and you go on. But if you'll develop that ability to perceive what is going to happen, one time I drove by a place with my wife and I said, see that field over there? One day it's going to be all businesses. And there was nothing there but a farm. I don't even know if there was a barn there. And about 30 years later, it's now Parkway in Wentzville. It's filled with businesses. Now, I probably should have gone the next step and invested in it somehow. But I think you have the ability to just look around and say, what's going to happen? What does the future hold? I believe you have that ability as a human, especially as a Christian, the ability to tap into that. Jesus actually said the Holy Spirit would show us things to come. So I think there's something supernatural. But even apart from that, if you're not a follower of Jesus, I believe you can look around and be perceptive about what's going to happen. There's more out there, and you need to see before others do. The second thing is develop a process for seeing further and sooner. In other words, how are you going to translate that vision into reality? I saw an area that was going to really develop, and it did, but I didn't do anything about it. In other words, I was correct. I actually was correct. I've done that several times with my wife, but I didn't make the next step. And so how do you convert this vision into a reality? The third thing is spend time with visionaries who inspire you to see further and sooner. There's nothing that stirs me up other than reading the Bible and praying more than being with someone else who's a visionary. It's contagious. Having a vision and being a visionary is contagious. It creates an atmosphere where you lift the limits and say, things are possible. You need to be around people who inspire vision in you. The fourth thing is ask the right questions to the right people. Know who to go to say, what about this? If what I see is true, if what I'm aiming at is true, what do you think I should do? Wage war by seeking advice. You need counsel. Don't be afraid to ask people. And even if you don't accept what they tell you, it's just good to get a diversity of opinions and perspectives. It's amazing how you can ask someone a question and they can give you the most profound answer. The purposes of a man's heart are like deep waters, but a man of understanding draws them out. The next thing is grow every day on purpose. You have to feed and exercise your vision to make it a reality. So feed your vision. Grow every day. Aim towards it. I love what he says in his book. How do you awaken the dream on the inside of you? How do you awaken the dream? Look behind you. What lessons have you learned that are going to help you in the future? What mistakes have you made? Failure isn't final if you learn from it. What things did you try and say, well, that was a great idea, I thought, but it didn't work out? Have the courage to say, that was a failure, but I'm going to learn from that failure. So look behind you. It's interesting because people will make a mistake, and it's so painful that they'll never venture another mistake. You've got to learn to process mistakes and go on. Maxwell's got what he calls the 24-hour rule. If he has a great victory or a loss, he says, I got 24 hours where I'm going to celebrate or I'm going to mourn, and then I forget it and go to the next thing. So look behind you. The other thing is look around you. What can you learn from other people's mistakes? Experience is not the best teacher. It's a very painful teacher. Instruction is the best teacher. And it's even better to learn from other people's mistakes because there's no pain involved. You just see, how did they do that? What did they do? They did what I thought I would do, and they failed. How do I learn from how other people made it or didn't make it? So you look behind you, you look around you at other people's mistakes, and then you look above you. Now this is, again, from a Christian perspective, this is where you say, God, what are you saying? What is it that you are dreaming? What is it that you want to see happen in the future? What gifts and talents and abilities did you put in me that if I discover, develop, and use them will actually help other people? How can I use what you gave me for others? I said it this way. What is God's dream for you? And better yet, what does God want to do through you for others? This is the faith part. God called people and gave them his dream. God called Moses. And here's what's interesting. In Exodus, it said, Exodus chapter 2 and chapter 3, God says something like this: I've heard the cry of the Israelites. I've seen their mourning. I've seen their pain. So I've come down to help them. And then he says, so Moses, I'm sending you. So God had a dream, and he called Moses to fulfill his dream. So it's not just you dreaming, but it's God dreaming through you. When you engage God's dream, you have God's resources to bring it to pass. I love that story. So look above you. Get some help. Look ahead of you. What do you see? I really had an experience recently where I do have a long-term plan in pencil. Somebody said, write it in pencil, don't write it in ink. And I was actually talking to someone else, and they were asking me what to do and how they were going to go forward. And I said, follow the example of the Israelites. Get peace in your heart. And that's the fire and the cloud that the Israelites had in the Old Testament. Whenever it was time to move, the cloud that was above them would move, and they would just stay under the cloud. At nighttime, it was a fire. They would just stay under the fire. So staying under the cloud in the New Testament is simply following the peace of God. And as I was telling this person, that's what you need to do, I felt like the Lord really corrected me and said, it's great that you got a 5-year plan or a 10-year plan or whatever it is, but the bottom line is you need to just do what I tell you to do day by day. There is a dependence where you just have to say, God, what's next? How do I follow you into the next step? Somebody said you don't need a map if you have a guide. Well, I love to have both. I think it's great that you have a plan. Just don't marry your plan. Have a vision, but make sure that your vision is flexible enough to be adapted as things change and as you learn more. As you get a better picture of where you're supposed to head, there are probably ingredients to your vision that you don't know yet. Just be open to add those things to your vision. The Bible says we can make our plans, but the Lord determines our steps. So planning is good, but God is the ultimate judge. And I'm going to finish with a scripture that I just love. I know this is really Bible heavy this week, but all good leadership comes from the Bible. There's a story in Genesis 11 before God made a covenant with Abraham. And it's talking about how the people got together to do something. And if you listen to this context here, it was a good business plan. What they did, their method was top notch. It would work in any, Fortune 100 company, Fortune 500 company. But they just had one missing ingredient. See if you can recognize it as I read it. Genesis 11:1 says, at one time, all the people of the world spoke the same language and used the same words. As the people migrated to the east, they found a plain in the land of Babylonia and settled there. They began saying to each other, let's make bricks and harden them with fire. In this region, bricks were used instead of stone, and tar was used for mortar. Then they said, come, let's build a great city for ourselves with a tower that reaches into the sky. This will make us famous and keep us from being scattered all over the world. Another translation says, let's make a name for ourselves. You have to ask yourself, what is the motivation of my vision? What is the passion of my vision? The passion of their vision was to make a name for themselves, to become famous. But the Lord came down to look at the city and the tower the people were building. Look, he said, the people are united and they all speak the same language. After this, nothing they set out to do will be impossible for them. It's remarkable that God said to people who weren't even seeking him for his will, if they can get united, nothing they set out to do will be impossible for them. Come, let's go down and confuse the people with different languages. Then they won't be able to understand each other, so their communication ability was gone, which tells you how important communication is in an organization. In that way, the Lord scattered them all over the world, and they stopped building the city. That is why the city was called Babel, because it is where the Lord confused the people with different languages. In this way, he scattered them all over the world. Now think about it. Think about their technique. Their method was first rate. They were one people. They were in complete unity. They had one language. Their communication was great. They all spoke the same language. Everybody knew what everybody else was doing, and they had one purpose. They were all working towards the same thing. One wasn't building a swimming pool while the other one built a tower. They were all united, building the same thing, and they had very good communication. But the missing ingredient was, even though they had synergy, and God said nothing's going to be impossible if I don't restrain them, they didn't have God's will. They were doing it for a selfish reason, and a true vision is not just about you. It's how God is going to use you to help other people, even a business. I mean, a doctor, a dentist, What is it that God wants to use you to do? Maybe to help somebody have better teeth. I mean, that's a good thing. Every good and perfect gift is from God. Maybe it's a doctor that's going to help people get better. That's a good thing. Maybe it's someone who's going to sell real estate and put people in the home that they really love. It's not just ministry, it's life. Your vision for life is so significant. Where are you headed? And more importantly, why are you headed there? Gerald Brooks said, when you become a leader, you lose the right to think about yourself. So a godly vision, a true vision, helps you make a real difference in the world. Without a vision, the people perish, but with the vision, great things can happen.